A system migration is not a software update. It is a fundamental rewiring of your organizational DNA. The stakes for this kind of transition are absolute. Today, we are cutting entirely through the standard vendor marketing to examine the precise engineering required to achieve actual operational stability. We will deconstruct the meticulous chronological planning, the unyielding requirements for data validation, and the critical human stabilization strategies that separate a successful go-live from a catastrophic failure.
Section 1. Executive Hook and Overview. The governing principle here is uncompromising. Your internal processes must dictate the platform.
You simply cannot buy your way out of bad operations by signing off on a massive capital expenditure for new software. Automating a fundamentally broken workflow does nothing but scale your organizational inefficiency, and it does so at a drastically higher financial cost. Proceeding toward a go-live event without executing an exhaustive, fully integrated conference room pilot is a reckless gamble on your business continuity. There must be zero tolerance for errors in the foundational architecture. If your internal teams cannot mathematically prove that the new system successfully handles maximum transactional stress in a simulated pilot setting, you do not possess a system that is ready for deployment. Vendor promises of seamless integration mean absolutely nothing against the rigid reality of operational execution.
Reverting to the legacy platform is not a contingency plan. It is a devastating admission of systemic failure, because reversing course mid-deployment carries severe financial penalties and destroys workforce morale. Executive leadership must assume highly visible, uncompromising ownership of this transition. If senior staff demonstrate any public hesitation, they instantly compromise the authority of their implementation teams. Department heads must loudly and visibly stand behind the new architecture. Without that unequivocal, unified executive mandate, the deployment is structurally compromised from the very first day, leaving the organization vulnerable to endless internal resistance.
Section 2. Detailed Operational Postmortem. Our entire focus here rests strictly on securing Phase A stability.
Securing your core baseline is a non-negotiable prerequisite before any secondary optimization can occur. This requires executing exhaustive operational testing across multiple, highly specific layers. Functional testing must validate complex inputs against strict business outputs. Performance testing is your stopwatch, designed to evaluate system integrity under maximum end-of-quarter workloads. You must prove integration continuity, ensuring seamless communication across all application programming interfaces. Workflow mapping must reflect physical reality, not theoretical ideals. System security protocols must be aggressively probed for vulnerabilities, assuming hostile intent. Finally, you must continuously verify backup redundancies. Identifying and resolving real-world technical debt across every single one of these operational layers is a mandatory requirement before leadership authorizes the next phase.
The undisputed lifeblood of your new architecture is your data. Precise data governance is therefore an uncompromising standard. If your financial ledgers are misaligned, or your inventory master data is inaccurate, the entire implementation will collapse under its own weight. You must engineer and enforce strict validation rules and mandatory entry fields to prevent new, corrupted data from infecting the system immediately post-launch. Importing poor legacy data fundamentally destroys the integrity of your new ERP before it has the opportunity to process a single live transaction. Clean data is not a preference. It is a prerequisite for survival.
To maintain operational alignment, leadership requires strict parameters. This involves locking in your exact project methodology, establishing rigid budget constraints, and defining hard go-live dates well before execution begins. Unrealistic deployment schedules inevitably force project managers to cut corners, which immediately introduces chaos into the production environment. By clearly defining the specific modules that are in scope, whether that involves finance, supply chain, or human resources, you actively prevent scope creep. This discipline forces the organization to prioritize essential baseline functions over unnecessary software customizations that dilute the core architecture.
We must address the chain of custody regarding data migration. The project team must maintain highly auditable records of all data cleansing procedures performed prior to the cutover event. If your implementation team cannot provide a clear, extensively documented trail detailing exactly how legacy data was mapped, scrubbed, and validated, your deployment strategy is dangerously incomplete. The mandate here is straightforward. You must eliminate missing values, rectify historical input errors, and secure absolute data accuracy. This documentation serves as your ultimate verifiable proof of readiness before leadership authorizes that final deployment sequence.
Section 3. The Human Blueprint.
This requires a calculated approach to managing change fatigue and protecting the identity capital of your workforce.
An enterprise software rollout is fundamentally a psychological transition. Tenured employees heavily tie their professional worth to their total mastery of the old legacy system. By introducing a new platform, you are temporarily stripping them of that operational competence. To strategically manage this resulting change fatigue, you must execute a highly structured methodology. Immerse your subject matter experts early in the design phase. Implement a strict train-the-trainer architecture. You must deliberately cultivate internal superusers. These are the embedded authorities on the operational floor who will absorb the inevitable end-user anxiety immediately following launch. Finally, leadership must proactively assess and systematically eradicate any remaining knowledge gaps to ensure continuous operational stability.
Operational stability relies entirely on a rigid security and access control matrix. Modern ERP systems centralize a staggering volume of highly sensitive corporate and financial intelligence. User access must be restricted strictly on a need-to-know basis. You must enable mandatory two-factor authentication across all organizational levels, heavily encrypt sensitive customer data both at rest and in transit, and severely limit the total number of users possessing administrative privileges. Establishing these uncompromising protocols, paired with continuous audit log reviews, forms your baseline defense against unauthorized internal access and external network threats.
As an executive leader, it is your responsibility to proactively dismantle any illusions of a perfect, frictionless go-live. Unrealistic expectations of immediate systemic perfection are highly dangerous to organizational morale. The operational reality is that there will be severe friction. Murphy's Law dictates the first 48 hours of any major cutover. Your staff must understand that perfectly verified data might still trigger unexpected errors when finally exposed to the live production environment. Transparent, authoritative communication regarding this necessary, unavoidable friction is your absolute best defense against the workforce rejecting the new software outright.
There is a highly predictable psychological reflex that occurs during any major systemic transition. End users will inherently blame the new software platform for their own procedural failures and manual data entry errors. The vast majority of early go-live problems are in fact human problems. When operational errors occur, leadership must investigate and expose the root cause transparently. Acknowledge legitimate software defects immediately, but do not allow the new platform to unfairly absorb the blame for human incompetence. If you permit the system to become a scapegoat, user adoption will collapse, and employees will quietly revert to managing the business on isolated manual spreadsheets.
Section 4. The Action Plan and Guardrails. Defining the chronological constraints and the ironclad rules for the cutover event.
Your selected rollout strategy carries massive operational and financial risk implications. Phase 1, the Big Bang approach, activates the new system exclusively while immediately terminating the legacy system. It demands absolute executive confidence. Phase 2, the phased approach, attempts to mitigate disruption by rolling the software out incrementally, either by specific module or geographic region. Then there is Phase 3, parallel operation, which involves running both the legacy and the new system concurrently. While this often feels like an attractive safety net to hesitant executives, it essentially doubles the daily workload for your employees. It introduces immense operational friction, creates severe data reconciliation nightmares, and exponentially increases project costs. Leadership must calculate these trade-offs with absolute precision.
A legitimate backup plan is your ultimate operational insurance policy. You architect it with the strict intention of never executing it. Your cutover plan must define specific, mathematically objective triggers that force a rollback sequence. Document your maximum acceptable downtime. Detail the precise technical methodology for how you will extract newly created transactions from the failing system to reconcile them back into the legacy platform. If it becomes mathematically obvious during the cutover window that the new architecture is failing, leadership must execute the rollback protocol without hesitation. Delaying that critical decision in hopes of a miraculous recovery only compounds a minor setback into a catastrophic disaster.
Intensive surveillance of critical incident volumes during the first 7 days post-deployment is a mandatory operational requirement. In a live environment, forensically resolving a mistake takes significantly longer than making one. Therefore, you must engineer excess support capacity before the launch sequence begins. This is definitively not the moment to optimize project margins by dismissing your external consultants. Keep your highly experienced, premium support teams stationed physically on-site to address the inevitable friction points rapidly. You must ensure that minor irritations are neutralized before they compound into critical operational blockages that threaten revenue generation.
Executive leadership must remember that the deployment event is simply a milestone. It is not the finish line. Following a successful go-live, you must ruthlessly track the new platform's actual operational metrics against the original justification targets outlined in the executive business case. Did the organization actually achieve the projected inventory carrying cost reductions? Did you measurably accelerate the financial close cycle? If the system underperforms against those baseline targets, you must take immediate remedial action. If it succeeds, you must visibly broadcast those operational wins to build permanent organizational confidence in the new architecture. Continuous, aggressive system optimization must become your standard operating procedure.
Ultimately, the success or failure of any enterprise software migration hinges entirely on the integrity of your underlying business processes. The technology itself is completely secondary to the operational discipline of the organization wielding it. As you finalize the architecture of your transition, I leave you with this fundamental analytical challenge. Examine your current workflows and your baseline data governance with absolute objectivity. Are you preparing to automate a verified, highly optimized operational blueprint, or are you merely investing massive amounts of capital to scale your existing inefficiencies?